Okay, today we are going to learn about finding the volume of composed figures. Here, our essential question is how can you find the volume of rectangular prisms that are combined? So let's take a look at our first one. And one way that we can do this is to use addition as we are trying to find the volume of this rectangular, or not rectangular prism, of this composed figure. What we're going to start by doing is we're going to break it apart, right? So we're going to look at our composed figure and we're going to break it apart so that we can turn it into multiple rectangular prisms. You can see here that they have broken it along this line right here to make it into the bottom prism and the top prism. An alternative could have been, right, that we could have just broken it this way, right? And then we would end up with this prism over here and then have this one over here. Um, the point is you can break them apart in the way that makes the most sense to you. We're going to work with what they've done. It just makes life a little bit easier. Okay, so after you take the composed figure and you break it into your two different rectangular prisms, right, you kind of like look at them totally separately. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the volume of this. Now, one thing I want to point out really quickly is that now it's telling me the height of this shape is 4 inches, right? But if I look back here, I can see that it said the height of it was 6 inches. Well, the reason why we've cut it down to 4 now is because it doesn't include this section right down here. And so to figure out how tall this is, right, we look at this little line right here, right? Well, it doesn't have a label there, so we're going to look over here because this is going to be the same height. Again, there's no label, but then when we look back here, right, we see that the height of this blue prism is in fact 2 inches. So if the total height is 6 inches, we take that 6, we subtract out the 2, and we're left with 4, right? So looking back at that, that is where this 4 comes from. Now everything else is going to be the same, right? This is still going to be 10 inches across the front. It's 4 inches from front to back. This part is still 2 inches tall. Over here, right, we still have 4 inches front to back, and then this part is 2 inches wide. So let's go ahead and find the volume. We're going to start with the green one here. So our length, we're going to say, is this measurement, and it is 4. We're going to look here and say that that's our width, and it is also 4. And then we're going to look here and say that that's our height, and that it is 2. Right, so we're going to find the volume of this little green piece by multiplying 4 times 4, which is 16, and then 16 times 2 gives me 32 cubic inches. All right, looking at the other one, right, let's just use this here on the front and say 10 is our length. We're going to use our front to back measurement of 4 and say that it's our width. And then we're going to use our 2 and say that it is our height. Remember, when it's multiplication and all we have going on is multiplication here, we can put these in any order that we want. This seems to make the most sense to me because 10 times 4 is pretty easy. It's 40. And then when I double that by multiplying by 2, 40 times 2 is 80. So volume of the green piece is 32 cubic inches. Volume of the blue piece is 80 cubic inches. And all we're going to do is we're going to take those two pieces and we're going to add them together to find the volume of the composed figure. So 0 plus 2 is 2. 8 plus 3 is 11. And so the answer to this one is 112 cubic inches. So one way is to break it apart and to use addition. An alternative method is to subtract the volumes, to subtract out the missing part, right? So if we look at this, this is an image that's got all the same exact measurements as that first one that we looked at, right? 6, 10, 4, all of those are exactly the same, right? And what we're going to do here is we are going to find the volume of this rectangular, of this composed figure as if it was one big solid rectangular prism, right? So that's where we're going to start out. So we're going to take and we're going to say, well, it's 6 by 10 by 4 is our front to back measurement. Remember, the key here is to always make sure that we get all three of our dimensions, right? So we get our 6 from our up and down, we get our 10 from going across the front, and we get our 4 by going from front to back, right? So we're going to multiply all three of these numbers together. We're going to pretend like the whole thing is one big piece, and 6 times 10 is 60, and 60 times 4 is 240 cubic inches. But of course, as we look at this, we know that it's not actually one solid figure. It is made up of kind of different pieces, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to find the volume of this piece that's missing. To do that, right, we're going to need to look at our other numbers, right? So if we know that this is 6, right, we want to only know like this length. Well, again, we know that this piece right here is 2 inches. So 6 minus 2 means that this piece is 4 inches tall. That length right there is 4, right? We need to know the length of this right here. Well, we know that the whole front was 10, but it doesn't include this little piece right here. So how big is that piece? Well, it doesn't tell us in the front, but it does tell us back here that it is 2 inches, right? So to find this length right here going across the front, we have 10 minus 2, and 10 minus 2 is 8, right? So across the front here, this is 8. And then we need to know what is our length here from front to back. Well, that never changed, right? Like down here, front to back is 4, so up here, front to back is also going to be 4, right? So to find the volume of this missing piece, we're going to multiply 4 times 8 times 4, and 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 8 is 128. Now what we're going to do is, instead of adding these numbers together, right, which is what we did on the last one because we had two pieces that we wanted to combine, here we have one big rectangular prism that we want to subtract out the smaller rectangular prism from. So we get 240 minus 128. We do a little bit of regrouping. 10 minus 8 is 2, 3 minus 2 is 1, and 2 minus 1 is also 1. So we have the same answer that we got on the last page of 112 cubic inches, and we'll go back just to double check and make sure that is in fact the case, right? So either way works, right? We can break it apart and then add it back together, or sometimes it makes more sense to find the volume of what it would be and then to subtract out the little piece that is missing. Yeah, just look at them, try to figure it out, decide what is going to work best for you. Right. We're going to look at this one. Now, that idea of subtracting out the missing piece really works best when we kind of have those L-shaped composed figures. When we have shapes that are like this one on this page, it's really kind of tricky to pull that whole idea off. So we're not going to be using the subtraction method here. We're going to be using the break it apart and add it back together. All right, so for this one, they've already broken it up for us. This really makes the most sense for ways to break it up. So we're going to start here. We're just going to label this prism A, right? And it's kind of hard to fit that in there, but we have it. So for prism A, right, and we'll call that this one right here. If we look at it here, we get a measurement of 4 feet. Across the front here, again, they don't give us a measurement, right? But they give it to us back here, right? That is 3 feet. So it's 3 feet across. And now what I need to do is I need to figure out how deep is this shape? What is this measurement back here? Well, because it's a prism, right, because it's this composed figure, right, we know that this side is also going to be the same, and this side is the same, and this little bit is the same, and this is a little bit is the same, and this little bit is the same. So we just look at all of those until we find our side length measurement that's labeled, and here our side length is 5, right? So from front to back, this whole thing is 5 feet. So we're going to keep that in mind as we keep working through it. All right, now let's look at prism B, right? And for prism B, we know that we're looking for this measurement to start with. It's not labeled, but it is labeled here in the back. So it is 5 feet across. We also need to know how tall it is, right? And as I look to find out how tall it is, I see over here, right, like this kind of like little C, like bracket thing, lets me know that the overall height of my entire prism or composed figure is in fact 8 feet. And then just like with our last one, right, we're going to put our front to back measurement last, and it is down here, it is again 5 feet. All right, time for prism C, right? So we get a height measurement right there. It is 2 feet tall. We need to figure out this measurement going across the front here. I look at the top, right? There's not a measurement there. I look back here, there's not a measurement here. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more work to figure this one out. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to say, well, the whole length all the way across the front is 12 feet. I've already looked at this measurement right back here, which is 3 feet. And I've already used this measurement right here, which is 5 feet. So I know that from here to here is 3 plus 5. And 3 plus 5 is 8, right? So if I've already dealt with the 8 feet going across the front and the whole thing is 12 feet long, then I can subtract. Then 12 minus 8 leaves me with 4. Right, so going across the front of this little piece over here for section C, this is 4, because 4 plus 5 plus 3 equals 12. Now, we have our measurement right there again, which is 5. So now all we need to do is we just need to do our multiplication and then add everything together. Let's see, 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times 5 is 60. So prism A has a volume of 60 cubic feet. Moving on to prism B, we get 5 times 8 is 40, and 40 times 5 is 200. And then prism C, 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times 5 is 40. We're going to add all of these together. So we get 60 plus 200 plus 40. Now, I'm going to do this part right here first because 60 plus 40 is 100, and 100 plus 200 is 300. So this composed figure has a volume of 300 cubic feet. Now, before we move on, I just want to look at something really quick. And hopefully what you may remember from, sorry, getting a smaller pen, what you may remember from earlier in the year, right, is if we are multiplying a group of numbers all by the same factor, right? We multiplied all of these had the same measurement from the front to the back. They were all multiplied by 5. So because of that, right, well, another way that we can do this is instead of saying 4 times 3 times 5, and then saying 5 times 8 times that 5, and 2 times 4 times 5, right, we're multiplying all of those times 5. An alternative method for doing this is to find the surface area of the front of this composed figure, right? So what is the surface area of this composed figure? And when I say surface area, I'm also kind of thinking of this more like our base area, right? If we labeled this as length and this as width, right, we know that length times width gave us our base area. And then all I have to do is I have to multiply whatever the surface area, whatever the base area of this entire composed figure is, times 5. So let's take a look at that idea. So we're going to do A, B, and C again. So A we said was 4 by 3 here on the front, and 4 times 3 is 12. B we said was 5 by 8, and 5 by 8 is 40, right? So these faces that we see on the front have areas of 12 square feet, 40 square feet. We get to the last one, 2 by 4 is 8 square feet. Now we can take these three numbers and add them together to get the total area of the front of this composed figure. Well, 12 plus 8 is 20, and 20 plus 40 is 60, right? So the surface area, the base area of this composed figure is 60 square feet, and then we just multiply it by that depth, right? The whole thing was 5 feet deep, and 5 times 0 is 0, and 5 times 6 is 300, and that's what we got for our answer earlier. This is my preferred method for using the addition method of finding the volume of composed figures, and it will work with the subtraction method as well. It's exactly the same. You just have to kind of think about it a little bit more. But yeah, I would rather just multiply by 5 once over here, and then it also allows me to add together smaller numbers, right? I mean, this one was pretty easy, right? 60 plus 40 plus 200 is pretty simple. But if it gets more complex, right, it's not just like numbers that end in a bunch of zeros, then adding these smaller numbers are going to be a lot easier. All right, let's try this one. When you pause the video, see what you can do on your own, and then come back and we will see how you did. Okay, so I'm going to take this one and I'm going to break it right here. And the reason I'm going to break it right here is because they've already given me this length and told me that it's 8. So that's also 8, and that is also 8. So they've just really made things simpler for me. Now, again, I'm going to use this method of finding the surface area and then multiplying it by their common measurement. And the common measurement is this measurement right here, the up and down, right? So the kind of the thickness, which is going to be 2. I'm going to look up here at the first one, and I get a side length of 10 and a side length of 3, and 3 times 10 equals 30. I'm going to look at this measurement right here, which is 8. And so here I get 8 times, and again, our front measurement is 3. So we get 24. And then I'm going to add together 24 plus 30, which is 54. And I'm going to multiply that by 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. So this one is 108 cubic centimeters. Now, if you don't like that method, let's just really quick run through the other fashion of doing it. We're going to find our volume of this upper rectangular prism, and it's going to be 10 by 3. Remember, we said this measurement was all the same all the way around, so by 2. And 10 times 3 is 30, times 2 is 60. Then we're going to move over here to this one. Here we have a side length of 8. This length is 3. And again, the whole thing is 2 centimeters tall. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 times 2 is 48. And we're just going to add them together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 6 plus 4 is 10. So these two numbers match up. All right, last one. Again, go ahead and give it a pause, come back, and let's see how you did. I'm going to take this one and I am going to cut it right across here in the front. I'm going to call this A and I'm going to call this B. Again, I'm going to use this idea of base area and then multiply it by its common dimension. The common dimension is right here. It's 4 feet from front to back, right? The last one we did was 2 centimeters tall. This one is 4 feet from front to back. So our top prism up here, we have our length of 3, and then this measurement is given to me back here. It's 2, so I get 3 times 2 for the area of prism A, which is 6. Coming down here to B, it is 9 feet across by also 2 feet tall. And 9 times 2 is 18. Oops, not times 18, but equals 18. I just add together 18 plus 6, which is 24. And I multiply that entire thing by that common dimension from front to back. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So we get a volume of 96 cubic feet. And again, for those of you who aren't a fan of kind of doing it this way, let's take a look at what it would be if we did it the other way. And again, we're going to cut it here, and we're going to just multiply all 3 dimensions. So we get 3 by 2, so 3 times 2, and then we know we need this dimension, which is over here. It's times 4. 3 times 2 is 6, times 4 is 24. Then down here, we're going to get the volume of this base, and it is 9 by 2 feet tall by, again, 4 feet deep. And here we get 18 times 4. It's a little bit harder, so I need to do that over here on the side. See, 8 times 4 is 32, and then that's 4 plus 3 is 7, so 72. So the volume of our upper prism is 24 cubic feet. The volume of our lower prism is 72 cubic feet. We add those together. 4 plus 2 is 6. 7 plus 2 is 9. And again, we get the same answer. First time we did it, right, we just waited to multiply by this. We multiplied 3 times 2, 9 times 2, and we added those two areas together, right? We added together 6 plus 18, which is our surface area, and then multiplied it by our depth. Great, that's our lesson for today. Have fun with it, and good luck.